Happy Friday, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us here at First Post America. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you from our studios here in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the U.S. and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest global headlines. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and his Japanese counterpart hold a phone call after a Chinese aircraft locked radar onto Japanese jets near Taiwan, with both sides agreeing that Beijing's actions are not conducive to regional peace. Russian President Vladimir Putin holds talks with his Iranian counterpart on the sidelines of a forum in Turkmenistan's capital as the Central Asian country marks 30 years of official neutrality. Turkey says its position on keeping the Russian S-400 air defense system remains unchanged, even as it holds talks with the U.S. over sanctions and obstacles to rejoining the F-35 fighter jet program. Nepal says the anti-graft protests in September that forced the country's prime minister to resign caused more than $586 million in losses in its $42 billion economy. And football star Lionel Messi will unveil a 21-meter statue of himself in India on Saturday as he begins a 3-day tour of the country, sparking a nationwide fan frenzy. We begin in South America, where Russian President Vladimir Putin has moved to reassure Venezuela as tensions continue to deepen around Caracas. In a phone call yesterday, Putin expressed solidarity with the Venezuelan people and reaffirmed Moscow's support for President Nicolas Maduro's government. Now, the Kremlin said both leaders committed to advancing their strategic partnership agreement, which covers trade, energy, finance, and humanitarian cooperation.
Tuve una larga conversación.
Today, I received a phone call in Russian. I had a long conversation with our elder brother, brave friend, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, who asked me to pass on a message to the people of Venezuela. Among many things, we spoke at length, and he said, "I want to express my admiration for the example of courage shown by the people of Venezuela in the circumstances they have had to face. And I want you to know that we give unwavering support to the Venezuelan process, to President Maduro, and to your efforts to defend your national sovereignty and the peace of the entire South American region."
The call was their closest direct contact since Maduro's visit to Russia back in May, and it came at a highly sensitive moment with the Venezuelan leader facing mounting external pressure and the opposition seeking fresh international backing. That pressure has mainly come from the United States, where President Donald Trump has escalated sanctions as well as military escalation. Washington recently seized the Guyana-flagged tanker Skipper off the Venezuelan coast, saying that the vessel was part of a sanctioned oil network. The White House said that the U.S. intends to keep the oil after the legal process.
And you have seen that he is delivering on that promise. With respect to the oil and what happened yesterday, the Department of Justice requested and was approved for a warrant to seize a vessel because it's a sanctioned shadow vessel known for carrying black market sanctioned oil to the IRGC, which you know is a sanctioned entity.
President Trump echoed that stance during an interview with Politico, warning that Maduro's days are numbered. The U.S. Treasury also targeted 3 nephews of Maduro's wife, along with 6 crude oil supertankers linked to Venezuela's state oil operations. And the moves have triggered fury in Caracas as Maduro called the tanker seizure criminal naval piracy and said his government would protect free trade of Venezuelan oil. His officials described the action as blatant theft and vowed to defend national sovereignty.
Absolutamente.
The crew of that ship, that vessel carrying 1,900,000 barrels of oil to international markets, paid for in Venezuela, because everyone who extracts oil pays for it first. They are kidnapped, they are missing, no one knows where they are. They kidnapped the crew, they stole the ship. They have ushered in a new era, the era of criminal naval piracy in the Caribbean. So Venezuela rejects in its entirety this act of criminal piracy against the entire Caribbean.
No fue en las costas de Venezuela, fue casi ya.
Now, in response to many of the actions by the Trump administration, some lawmakers are warning that President Trump is sleepwalking the U.S. into a war with Venezuela.
Their claims that this is about going after drugs or holding people accountable for drugs is just a bunch of nonsense. It's a cover story. And what happened with the ship is an example of how that's just a cover story. The real goal here is clearly regime change in Venezuela and accomplishing regime change by force.
And coloring it all is the reappearance of opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who resurfaced in Norway. She called for Maduro to be deprived of financial resources and confirmed that her travel was in fact facilitated by the United States. Now, Machado has been in hiding since the disputed 2024 election, which independent analysis suggests Maduro lost by a wide margin to Edmundo Gonzalez. Even traditional allies such as Brazil and Colombia have refused to recognize Maduro's victory. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to expand sanctions and threatening actions against suspected narcotics routes from Venezuela. He insists prolonged conflict is not the goal, but senior U.S. officials say they will not allow sanctioned oil to move freely.
So it certainly seems like the U.S. is escalating the pressure on Maduro. But at the same time, we're seeing these reports that Trump and Maduro are talking behind the scenes. And this would be compatible with how this White House engages in these really high-stakes diplomatic talks.
With Washington tightening sanctions, Moscow extending support, and Caracas refusing to yield, the region is bracing for the next move, and it may hinge on what Putin, President Trump, and Maduro do next. And now to the war in Europe, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that the United States has proposed a new idea, a so-called free economic zone in parts of the eastern Donbas. It's a proposal that would require Ukrainian troops to withdraw from some areas, but with one unusual condition: Russian troops would not be allowed to advance into that territory. And now questions are growing about whether such a plan is realistic, fair, or even enforceable. According to Zelensky, this American proposal marks a shift. Earlier versions suggested Ukraine should hand over the parts of the Donbas that still are controlled by Russia, but now Washington is suggesting a compromise. In theory, this would create a buffer, a zone that neither army controls, which would then be designated as a free economic zone. But Zelensky says the idea is filled with unanswered questions. The biggest one: who would actually govern the territory? Would it be an international force, a civilian administration, or something else entirely? As he put it, they don't know. And without firm guarantees, President Zelensky argues the plan is risky because nothing would prevent Russian troops from simply moving in later.
If one side's troops have to retreat and the other side stays where they are, then what will hold back these other troops, the Russians? Or what will stop them disguising themselves as civilians and taking over this free economic zone? This is all very serious. It's not a fact that Ukraine would agree to it, but if you are talking about a compromise, then it has to be a fair compromise.
Now, the Donbas region has been a major fighting front between Russia and Ukrainian forces. And Russia has invaded and even occupied more than 80% of Donbas since 2014, and it plans to capture the rest through force. Meanwhile, Ukraine has so far refused to hand over its territory to end the conflict. The president of Ukraine has also stressed that any territorial concession would require approval from the Ukrainian people. Under the U.S. proposal as described by Zelensky, the Ukrainian forces withdraw from the region. The front lines would then be frozen in their current positions. Russia, meanwhile, would give up small pockets of land it controls elsewhere, but the plan still faces deep disagreements, including over who will control the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. This latest round of negotiations comes as Zelensky faces pressure from President Donald Trump, who has repeatedly pushed Kyiv to accept the U.S. plan. Now, in recent days, President Trump has accused Zelensky of not reading the draft proposal and has questioned his legitimacy, calling for elections in Ukraine, talking points similar to what we've seen from the Kremlin. President Trump has also said that the U.S. will take part in Ukraine peace talks only if there's chance of progress.
Well, there's a meeting on Saturday. We'll see whether or not we attend the meeting. We said we'll attend the meeting if you think there's a good chance of they want me to attend, they want us to attend. And we'll be attending the meeting on Saturday in Europe if we think there's a good chance. And we don't want to waste a lot of time. We think it's negative.
Now, at the same time, President Trump's press secretary said that the president is frustrated with both sides.
The president is extremely frustrated with both sides of this war, and he's sick of meetings just for the sake of meeting. He doesn't want any more talk. He wants action. He wants this war to come to an end. And the administration has spent more than 30 hours, just in the past couple of weeks, meeting with the Russians and the Ukrainians and the Europeans and speaking with them as well. So we'll see about the meetings this weekend, and stay tuned.
President Zelensky says that Kyiv has presented the U.S. with an updated version of the peace plan, and he added that the Trump administration wants a full understanding of the status of the plan by Christmas.
An hour ago, we had conversation with the United States team about possible security guarantees for Ukraine, and we are working on a framework document, and it must be strong enough to truly work. We believe this document should be approved by the United States Congress. This would mean real, solid, legally binding security guarantees for our country.
But there's a larger uncertainty hanging over all of this. Is Vladimir Putin actually ready to sign a peace agreement? And as of now, Ukraine and the U.S. are circling around a difficult, delicate compromise. Whether this proposal becomes a path to peace or just another political dead end will depend on what comes next from Kyiv, from Washington, and ultimately from Moscow. And next, we take you to a growing emergency across Washington state and parts of western Canada, where days of intense rain have triggered widespread and potential historic flooding. The United States and Canada have been hit by a powerful atmospheric river, which is a long, narrow band of water vapor that forms over the ocean and transports enormous amounts of moisture. When that moisture makes landfall, it releases intense, prolonged rainfall that can trigger major flooding. Visuals show entire neighborhoods flooded with homes, farmland, and roads completely inundated. Officials say an atmospheric river has dumped relentless rain over the region, pushing rivers to dangerous levels and ravaging the ground. The storm has unleashed between 5 and 10 inches of rain across large areas of the Pacific Northwest. And in some locations along the western slopes of the Cascade Mountains, rainfall over the past 72 hours has exceeded 1 foot. Here in Washington, more than 100,000 residents have been forced to evacuate due to the flooding, and the governor has declared a statewide emergency warning that lives are in fact at risk.
Let me just give you an update on our request. The state has a request for a declaration of emergency from the federal government. After my press conference yesterday afternoon, I had a call with them with FEMA, I believe, at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. We had a good conversation with General Welsh and others to describe in detail the situation here in Washington State and really the tremendous need that Washington State has for assistance from the federal government.
Authorities warn that flood levels could be potentially historic in one of the state's major agricultural areas, the Skagit River floodplain. People have been ordered to evacuate. Home to roughly 78,000 people, the floodplain is prone to catastrophic flooding as rivers continue to rise. The Skyamish River in Washington has already crested at its highest level since 2006. And the governor of Washington has also emphasized that the situation is unpredictable as well as dangerous.
The situation is, the word that was used by in the briefing earlier is unpredictable. And that's what we want to communicate to Washingtonians. This situation is extremely unpredictable. We're using the best information we can to provide guidance to the people of the state, but it is unpredictable. And I just want to emphasize that if you have instructions to evacuate from your local authorities, please, please, please evacuate. You know, your life is extremely important to us.
Meanwhile, in Canada's British Columbia, the heavy rain has finally eased, but thousands in the Fraser Valley remain on edge as rivers continue to rise. Officials have expanded flood warnings and issued new evacuation orders after the storm dumped up to 150 millimeters of rain in less than 24 hours. Forecasters warn that another storm could hit the region by Sunday, which could take weeks to fully recover from the damage near the U.S.-Canada border. Firefighters have rescued several people from flooded homes as well. Authorities have closed dozens of highways and suspended service between Seattle and Vancouver, as some areas receiving over 6 inches in 24 hours, posing landslides and avalanche threats. Now, Hundreds of National Guard members are being deployed to help with evacuations, rescues, as well as logistical support. Officials are also going door to door to urge residents to leave. And across the region, first responders are working around the clock to reach people stranded by the rising water. In Paliop, emergency crews have been moving through flooded neighborhoods using dinghies as well as swift water teams to pull residents to safety.
Pierce County Sheriff's Office Swift Water Team is currently now at Bill and Dan's RV Park in Ording. We have 3 active rescues that are going on. You can see the RVs that are underwater behind me, and we have 3 adults currently that our Swift Water Team is working on. We do have boats coming out to assist with this rescue, and there'll be more information to follow.
As the rain continues and rivers keep rising, authorities are urging everyone to stay alert, follow evacuation orders, and avoid traveling to risky areas. And now to Saratoga, California, where an Indian origin millionaire was at the center of a dramatic and chaotic incident at a Bay Area winery. Authorities say he tried to start a fire, threw a wine bottle at the staff, and then rammed his Tesla into 2 parked cars before crashing over an embankment. Deputies tried multiple rounds of verbal de-escalation but were forced to use pepper spray and pepperball rounds to get him out of the wrecked vehicle. The entrepreneur, known for promoting mental health awareness, was arrested and taken in for evaluation. The incident has also raised serious questions about what in fact triggered the outburst. Here's a story with more.
Authorities in California have arrested Indian origin millionaire Berri Vikram, the founder of the India-based mental health platform Better Life Wellness, after a chaotic and destructive episode at a Saratoga winery. The incident unfolded on December 8 at Garrod Farms Estate Winery and Stables, turning an ordinary afternoon into a scene of confusion and alarm. Winery staff say they first saw Vikram trying to start a fire on the property. They confronted him, but the situation quickly spiraled. According to the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, Vikram grabbed a wine bottle and hurled it at employees. He then rushed to his white Tesla and sped away. Deputies say he did not simply flee, he allegedly rammed his Tesla into 2 parked vehicles. One of them rolled over an embankment, and seconds later his own car plunged over the same drop and crashed. Officers arrived to find Vikram barricaded inside the damaged vehicle. They attempted verbal de-escalation, urging him to exit the car repeatedly, but he refused.
The suspect, Berri Vikram, 42, of Menlo Park, then drove his Tesla off the embankment and refused to surrender. Despite several de-escalation attempts, he did not comply. Deputies used pepperball and spray, eventually forcing him to crawl out of the car.
Vikram now faces charges including assault with a deadly weapon and resisting arrest. The sheriff's office described the incident as a wild scene in Saratoga, and as of now, the investigation remains open. Vikram, who is 42 years old, is an Indian origin entrepreneur and millionaire who lives in Menlo Park, about 19 miles from the winery. Property records show that he owns a 6-bedroom home valued at roughly $6.6 million. His behavior has fueled speculation online, with many suggesting that he may have been experiencing a mental health crisis. However, authorities have not commented on any possible motive. Before this episode, Vikram was publicly known for encouraging open conversations about emotional well-being. He founded Better Life Wellness in 2016 to promote accessible counseling and emotional support. He also serves as Executive Director of Business Development at Field King, a global farm equipment manufacturer. Neither organization has issued a statement about his arrest. The dramatic weekend outburst stands in stark contrast to Vikram's long-held message about confronting emotional strain. For now, the Indian origin founder remains in jail as investigators work to determine what triggered the encounter. More details are expected as the case develops.
And finally, the way Americans treat depression might be about to change. The Food and Drug Administration has just approved the country's first at-home brain stimulation device, a headset that promises a drug-free option at a time when depression is affecting more people than ever. Created by a Swedish tech company, the device sends a mild electrical current to the part of the brain that controls mood. It's already being used in Europe, but this is the first time U.S. regulators have given it the green light. In our report, we break down how it works, why it's getting so much attention, and what it could mean for millions looking for a new way to feel better.
In a landmark move that could reshape how depression is treated in the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, has approved the country's first at-home brain stimulation device. This offers patients a drug-free alternative at a time when depression numbers have reached alarming levels. The device, developed by Swedish health tech company Flow Neuroscience, uses a gentle electrical current to stimulate the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It is a part of the brain involved in regulating mood. The treatment, known as transcranial direct current stimulation, has been used in parts of Europe for years. But until now, it had faced scientific skepticism and regulatory delays in the U.S. Designed for home use under remote clinical supervision, the headset delivers low-level electrical current during 30-minute sessions. Patients typically follow a 12-week schedule. 5 sessions per week for the first 3 weeks, then 2 or 3 weekly sessions thereafter. The company plans to launch the headset in the U.S. by prescription in the second quarter of 2026. The expected retail price of the device will be between $500 to $800. The company is currently in discussions with insurers and hopes to announce coverage options in early 2026. The FDA cleared the device for adults aged 18 and older with moderate to severe major depressive disorder. This can be used either as a standalone therapy or in combination with medication or psychotherapy, as long as the patient is not considered medication resistant. According to the company, in Europe, the UK, Switzerland, and Hong Kong, more than 55,000 people have already used the device. The FDA based its approval on a mid-stage clinical trial in which 58% of patients achieved remission after 10 weeks. Some of them were already receiving therapy or medication. The agency also reviewed a larger 2024 Phase 2 trial involving 174 adults that showed significant improvement compared with a control group. In its decision, the FDA noted that while the device's benefits are modest, they probably outweigh risks, which are largely limited to headaches, tingling, and mild skin irritation. Skin burns were reported only when users reused or dried out the electrode pads. Still, the treatment remains a contested field. A 2023, a trial published in The Lancet found the technology offered no more benefit than a placebo. Other studies, including several funded by Flow, have reported positive results. The approval comes against the backdrop of soaring depression rates. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, depression diagnoses have jumped 60% in the past decade, and now affects more than 20 million adults annually. Against this landscape, clinicians and patients are searching for alternatives to antidepressant medications, which can cause side effects when used long-term. If widely adopted, the device could open the door to a new chapter in mental health treatment.
That's our show for today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here next week.